What's blue and orange and all done? That's right, my block. Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and today I am going to give you a pattern and a step-by-step tutorial to make this quilt block. This is part of my 2025 quilt along series. If you don't know what that is, the entire year of 2025, I'm giving you a video tutorial and a free block pattern that gives you instructions for making the same block in 4 different sizes so you can choose the size of quilt you want to make. At the end of 2025, we'll put all those blocks into a quilt that we'll be able to enjoy and snuggle under in 2026. The block this month is called Spinning Star, or at least that's what I'm calling it. This is a block I have wanted to make for a long time and I never really tackled, and I thought this was the month that we were going to do it. It is really easy. It looks deceptively difficult. Let's just put it that way. It is not difficult. It's half square triangle units, flying geese, and then everything else is squares or rectangles. I've done all of the thinking for you so you don't have to worry about it. Though I will apologize to those of you that are maybe doing the 3-inch block, because this might be a bit of a challenge for you at 3 inches, but I'd love to see if some of you tackle it. If you are doing the 3, the 6, or the 9-inch version of the quilt and you don't like how intricate that small of a block looks, guess what? This is a quilt the way you want to make it. You decide. So you can easily swap this block out for one of the previous month's blocks, or if you have another block that you like making, you can look up on the internet instructions for that pattern in the size that you need, and you can make that and put it in place of block 10. The 12-inch version of the block was not difficult, but I would probably second guess life choices if I was doing this in the 3-inch. At least at first. All right, friends, let's take a look at the fabric that Cotton Cut sent to me this month. We'll get into the step-by-step tutorial, but don't forget, you'll want to stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to show 20 blocks from last month's block that really caught my eye this month. Let's dive into it. Our quote card this month says, "Small steps lead to big changes," and our fabric enthusiast was Mary. She picked 5 different areas for us: holiday seasonal, blenders, batiks, reproductions, and floral. I'm going to do my best guess to try to match the fabric I got to this card. I will say I'm not sure I'm going to love the reproduction. I specifically asked not to get any reproduction, but sometimes what they pick surprises you. Let's see what we got for the fabric. This is definitely a holiday seasonal. It's Warm Welcome by that person, for Robert Kaufman. I'm going to guess that this next one is from the same line, but you can see from the selvage, I don't have information on that. I don't know whether I love this one or hate it. It looks like it's called Kaleidoscope by something that starts with the word Billy. I don't have a selvage on this one, but I can tell you it's probably a Lori Holt. It just looks very Lori Holtish to me. That Billy person did this one as well. It's called Supernova. This reminds me of tie-dye. I don't know if I love it or hate it, but I just realized those look like little hearts. I've got no usable salvage on this one, so I don't know who it is, but I think I like the greens and the blues here. But I'm kind of more of a turquoise teal person, so this would definitely appeal to me. I have no usable salvage on this one, but I can tell you from the feel of it, it is art gallery fabric, and the art gallery fabric that I got this time is a floral. It's Kindred by Sharon Holland. So yeah, that's got to be that. When this was folded up, I was like, yeah, but when it's opened, I'm like, ah. Here is another one from the Kaleidoscope line by Billy Review. Those kind of look a little bit like sunflowers to me. Moving into the world of batiks, we have got some Banyan batiks. I love Banyan batiks. In fact, I'll be working exclusively with Banyan batiks on all of my live streams in the month of November, and I think I may have a print very similar to this. Keeping with the batik theme, we have another purple that goes quite nicely with that one. I'm loving those two the most so far. Billy Review is listed on my card as a blender. Here is another one of those blenders. And this, to me, the color, I think, just reads Ian, while those two purple ones definitely read Mary to me. And the last one we have is another Art Gallery fabric. So I believe this one is also Kindred by Sharon Holland for Art Gallery fabrics. So those are the 12 fabrics I got. Now we got to figure out what we're going to use for the project. So if we take a look at the pattern, I actually have 4 fabrics that I need to use for this month's block. I could do this with 3 if I wanted to, and that would basically mean that the fabric I use for K needs to be the same fabric as my star legs and this ribbon. But you can also do this with as many fabrics as you want, although you'll have to figure out how to replace the different colors. I've only got 12 fat quarters to choose from, and when these are all folded up in the box, I'm going to tell you, it feels like they might all go together, but not necessarily once you open it up. Cotton Cuts does a really good job of giving you a variety of fabrics. You can see I've got some Art Gallery, I've got some boutiques, I've got these 4 from a specific collection, got a couple Lori Holt, and I got a couple of fall, autumn type of fabrics. Since I want to work with 4 fabrics, my inclination is to use these 4 since they're all from the same line. They're not necessarily my cup of tea, but there are a couple fabrics in here that I do like, and I'm hoping that if I choose wisely, the block will look pretty good with this. And that means that I get to save these pretty ones for later. I get to pass these on to a friend, and I get to use these in a video, which you may have already seen. So the first thing I need to do is go starch my fabrics so that I can get them cut up and show you how to sew this month's block. Don't forget that the pattern is on my website for you to download for free. It gives you sizes for 12, 9, 6, and 3-inch blocks. And this is block number 10 of a 12 block series. We're coming right around the end of this. So if you haven't caught up or you haven't started, don't worry, there's still time. All the blocks are easy to sew, definitely beginner friendly, and the videos and patterns will be available forever. So let's get starting. So these are the fabrics that I have to work with, and now I got to figure out what's going to be what. Well, I'm immediately drawn to making this dark border in the star legs, this dark blue, and then making this little ring that kind of goes around it, that orange. And then I've got to decide what I want for the center of the star. I'm thinking that, maybe, we'll see. And then this would be the background against those 2 fabrics. So let me lay this out so we can see what our contrast looks like. So these 2 fabrics are going to be up against that, and these 2 would be next to each other, and these 2 are next to each other. I don't know how I feel about this. Let me think about it. You know, I'll be honest with you, this isn't what I would choose, and what's really throwing me off is this one as a background. But sometimes just because something doesn't look good like this, once you cut it up and put it into the block, it actually looks okay. And if I'm being honest, the whole challenge of this quilt was to use only fabric that was sent to me by Cotton Cuts and to give you guys a year-long sew along. So if it's not my favorite fabric, that's okay. It's challenging me to work outside of my comfort zone. I really like 2 of the ones in here, but the other 2, I'm a little off on. We're going to go with the layout that I already told you. So as a reminder, I am making the 12-inch size of this block, which is great because it's going to be a whole lot easier to cut. But I want to highlight that some of these measurements are actually 5/8 or 7/8, and that can be a little tricky for you. Specifically, the 3-inch and the 9-inch are showing measurements in the 8s. If you don't know how to read a ruler to find the 8s, in between each one of those big solid lines, there are usually dashed lines. And if you count the ticks over with me, you have 8. So this is 0, then 1, 2, 3. This long dashed line is 4 because that represents a half mark, a half of an inch. then you have 5, 6, 7, and then 8 is the next solid line for the half or for the full inch. If you're going to measure 5/8, then you're just going to go to that first little line just past your ½ inch mark. If you're going to measure 3/8, you're going to go to that little line just before your ½ inch mark. And if you need to do 7/8, then you're going to do that last little tick before the next full inch mark. Now, some rulers, I think the So Yeah rulers have them. Some rulers have 1/16 inch marks, and I did not write my instructions for that because I figured nobody is going to cut that precise for this block of the month. But if you do have the 16-inch one or 16th one, you'll know that because you'll have 16 dashes between 1 inch and the next one. And so for that, if you're going to do 3/8, then you would just take that top number, multiply it by 2, and that's how many you would count over. So 3 times 2 would be 6, 5 times 2 would be 10, and 7 times 2 would be 14. Make sense? Let's get cutting. This is going to be my background fabric for better or for worse. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this up. I have that referenced on the pattern with all of these little colored swatches. You'll notice on the pattern, the color swatches that are over here correspond to the color of the block. So you can really easily see how much you're going to cut. Each one of these rows of fabric is one different cut, though that number, letter, might be used in multiple areas in the quilt. I've got my block layout here and all of my fabric is cut and labeled and I am ready to get sewing. But before we do, I just want to caution you, take a breath and don't panic because this block is a whole lot easier to put together than you might think. The illustration, this 3D effect that you're getting is just a combination of half square triangle units and some flying geese. Flying geese units and half square triangles can be a little tricky for a beginner. So what I've done in this pattern is made the cutting measurements bigger than what's really needed. That's going to allow us to put the pieces together and then square them down. Yes, it's going to require an extra step, but it's going to make sure that your pieces are just absolutely perfect and ready to go. And with all of the intricacies happening here, just trust the process. This is the way we want to do it. The other thing that we'll want to look at is the layout of the block. So I'm not going to put this together in rows because as you can see, I've got some pieces over here that are the same height as these. And if I tried to do something like that, I have to do a partial seam and that's just not worth it. So I'm going to start in the center and work my way out. So I'm first going to make my star in the center. And then I'm going to do the side borders and then the top and bottom borders around that star. And then this last border, I'm going to do the sides and then the top and bottom. Now, when I do all of these together, it's going to yield this block. But before we start sewing our star together and everything else, we need to start making our half square triangle units and our flying geese. Let me show you how I'm going to make a half square triangle unit, and then you can rinse, lather, and repeat that for all of the half square triangle unit combinations that you need in the block. To demonstrate how to do a half square triangle unit, I'm going to build out my B and H half square triangle units. I'm just going to do one so you can see how I do it. And then I'll put all of my other HSTs together off camera. So I want to take one fabric of each that are going to be on here. And every time I pair those together, I'm going to get 2 units from this. On the wrong side of one of the fabrics, I'm going to take a ruler and a marking utensil. And I'm just going to draw a line from one corner to the other. This method is called the 2 at a time method because when you do this, you're going to get 2. Makes sense, right? Now I'm going to put those fabrics right sides together or pretty sides together and I'm going to make sure that they are nice and lined up. And then I'll take this over to my machine and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away on this side of the line and a 1/4 inch away on this side of the line. Once my unit's sewn together, then I'm going to take it over to a cutting surface. I'm going to use a ruler and a rotary cutter to cut this apart right on that line that I drew. You could use a pair of scissors if you wanted to, but I like to use a rotary cutter and a ruler. Then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to open these up. I'm going to press these to the darker fabric, which in my case is the blue, but you could press them open if you wanted to, or towards a different fabric. Either way is fine. I'm going to come in with a hot iron, no steam or anything else. I'm just going to set it right on top of that half square triangle unit so that I have heat applied to this, and that's going to make it nice and flat. If I wanted to, I could use an Acorn Easy Press pen. That's just a little marker that has liquid in it, and when you push the nib in, that liquid starch comes out onto the nib and you can draw starch right here. There's not a whole lot of bulk in these, so I'm not as worried about that. My next step is going to be to square these down to the size that I need. And I know that this needs to be 2 inches squared. So let me show you how I do that. I find when I square up, using a square ruler, especially a smaller one, is a lot easier, but you can do this with any ruler that has a 45-degree line. The first thing that you're going to want to do is find that 45-degree line on your square ruler or other ruler. If you have a square ruler, it's the line that starts in one corner and goes in the other. Really easy to identify. You're going to lay that diagonal line right on top of that line where the two fabrics meet. And then, because I made my cuts bigger than they need to be, I'm going to have a bit of waste here, but this is what makes the project a little bit more beginner friendly. I'm going to make sure that I have fabric off of the top and off of the side, as well as past and below the measurement on the ruler that I want to square up to. In this case, I'm squaring up to 2 inches, and so I want to make sure that my fabric goes to the left of 2 and to the bottom of 2, while I still have some fabric on the right and the top to clean up. So I'm going to come in with my rotary cutter. I'm going to cut off the right side, cut off the top. I'll lift my ruler up, turn this around 180 degrees, and now those lines that I just cut are going to go exactly on that 2-inch mark. That 45-degree line is going to go on that same spot that we had before, and then make sure everything's lined up, measure twice, cut once, cut off the right, cut off the top. And that is how I square up a half square triangle unit. That's how I sew it and square it up. You're going to do that to all of the HST pairs that you need for the pattern. I've got a lot to do, so I'm going to get to it, but through the magic of video editing, I'm probably going to have my pieces done before you do. The next unit that we're going to make is our flying geese unit here. And so what I'm going to do is take the main fabric A, which is a rectangle, and I'm going to take the C squares and I'm going to stitch and flip them on each of these rectangles. Just like I did before, I'm going to show you how I do one, and then you can repeat this combination for all of the flying geese units that you need to make in the block. So I'm going to take 1 of the body and 2 of the sky. On the wrong side of our sky fabrics, we're going to take a marking utensil and a ruler, and we're going to draw a line from one corner to the other on both of those pieces. I'm going to take this over to my machine and I am going to sew. I'm going to lay one corner down on the right side. I'm going to sew just 1 thread to the right of this line, not directly on top of it, 1 thread off to the right. Now, if you're using the measurements that are in the pattern, you're going to square down, and so it doesn't matter whether you sew right on the line or right next to it. But for me, since I cut them exact, I'm going to sew right next to it. One side is attached, but before I attach the other part of sky, I need to cut this off. Now, let me show you something. If you are working with a pattern where your flying geese units are not made bigger and you need to square them down, there's a trick here that'll make sure that your flips, anytime you're doing a stitch and flip, is precise. So after you've sewn the piece of fabric on, you lay it down, put your finger in between the two layers and push that up and over and just give that a little crease. What you should see is something that looks like this. From the front, your little flap should cover that corner exactly, and it should do the same thing from the back. If when you fold it over, it is too small, that means you went too far to the left. You're going to need to rip that seam out and try again. If when you folded it over, it's too big, like this, that means you sewed too far to the right. Now, the saving grace there is you just need to move your stitch a little bit further left. You don't have to rip that seam out. So I folded mine over. It looks great. So I'm going to take this over to my cutting surface. I'm going to measure about a 1/4 inch away. I'll trim that off. And if you're glutton for punishment, you can save this, sew it up, and use it as a teeny tiny half square triangle unit. And then I'll bring it back over to my pressing surface. And with a hot iron, I'm going to lay it on top of the fabric so that that seam is laid nice and flat. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. I just need to be careful that the drawn line that I made is coming up and intersecting with the piece of sky that I just attached. I'm going to test to make sure that my flap is good. Looks good from the front, and it looks pretty good from the back. So I will take this over to my cutting surface, trim that at a 1/4 inch. Then I'm going to put that up, bring in my hot iron, and there you have it. Now, I told you that you have to square these up. So I'm going to show you how I would square them up if I wanted to. I'm going to go back over to my cutting surface here. I'm going to take my square ruler. It needs to be at least as wide as your flying geese and at least as tall as the height of your flying geese. I need that 45-degree line, and I'm going to line it up right here. I'm going to have the flying geese pointed towards me. And I'm going to look for a couple of things. In this case, this flying geese should measure 2 inches by 3.5. So my ruler is 3.5 inches. That's absolutely dead on. I am looking to make sure that the flying geese is hitting at or going below the height that I need it to square up to. So in this case, I want it to be 2 inches. That's what I'm looking for. Secondly, I'm looking to make sure that that 45-degree line is right on top of the line where those two fabrics meet. And then thirdly, and most importantly, if you look really, really close, you should be able to see that this point right here is hitting at exactly a 1/4 inch. That's what's going to help you preserve your points when you put this together. I don't need much trimming actually, because I used pretty exact pieces, but just to be safe, I'm going to run my rotary cutter along the top, along the side, and to take off just a couple hairs. And now I'm just going to line everything up based on those fresh, clean cuts that I just made. And that is how you will trim up your flying geese units. You will probably have more to cut off than what I did. Okay, through the magic of video editing, I'm going to be able to jump ahead here. So I'm going to jump into making all of my flying geese units, all of my half square triangle units, and then I'll come back and show you how to assemble the layout of this block. Because like I said, that's the trickiest part. We just want to make sure that we're doing it step by step, the way I have it laid out in the pattern. So I'm going to kick it into caffeinated mode, and I'll meet you back here in a minute. Once all of our half square triangle units and flying geese are put together, then that means it's time to start assembling the block. We're going to start from the center and work our way out. The easiest thing for you to do is to take that block layout diagram and have it up somewhere for reference, whether it's on your phone, your iPad, your computer, or even print it out on a piece of paper. We're going to start by placing our fabric K right down in the middle, and then we're going to take our DG flying geese and orient them so the flying geese are pointed in towards the center square. And then we're going to take our EB half square triangle units and orient them so that the fabric that is the same as this is pointing in. So we should always have our background fabrics pointing in towards the middle, and the other fabric is kind of pointing out away. Once I have that done, I'm going to sew this row, this row, this row, and then put them all together. And when I do that, I'm going to make sure that I'm pressing the top and bottom row in the same direction and the middle row in an opposite direction. You can do whatever works for you. I am going to press my middle row in towards the middle and my top and bottom row either open or out away from the middle, whichever works. The next piece that I'm sewing together is a flying geese onto the square. So I'm just going to do it with the flying geese on top so I can see that X intersection where the fabric or the thread, sorry, the sewing all lines up together. And I want to stay right through or just to the right of that. And then I've got one more half square triangle unit and flying geese unit. And I'm going to make sure that those seams lock in nicely here too. For right now, I'm just going to finger press my seams. I'm not going to bring my iron in just yet, but if you wanted to iron this with a hot iron, you are certainly welcome to do that. Now I'm going to take these and attach them to those rows. Back over here at my pressing surface, I'm going to finger press the pieces out away from one another, and then the middle will go in towards the middle, and then the top will be out away from that middle section. Now, if I wanted to, I could sew them together without pressing with heat, but I like this part to be pretty flat before I assemble everything. So I'm going to bring my hot iron in and just get those seams to lay as flat as I can without introducing any starch or Acorn Easy Best Print or anything like that. We just want them to lay flat-ish so that we can sew our rows together. Because this row and this row have the seams going out away from the middle, and the middle row has the seams going in towards the middle, then I can line this up so that my seams on either side nest, and that looks like this. I'm going to butt those seams right up next to each other, and then once I can feel that they're locked into place, I can either pin or clip or hold on to that. Because I want both of my seams to nest before I go sew, and you don't have to, sometimes I don't do it this way, I am going to pin each of those seams. And I have a secondary point that I can feel for some nesting too if I wanted to, and that would be this 45-degree line, because our seams should nest here too, just like that. So if you want to be super particular and make sure that everything is really lined up, you can pin the heck out of this little piece of fabric, just like you see me doing here. Let's see if that actually works the way we think it should. My top row is now attached, and those points look good enough for me. So now I'm going to attach the bottom one. I'm not going to pin this time because I'm actually not a very big pinner for something small like this. I feel like when I'm at the machine, I can keep pretty good control of the fabric by just using my fingers or a stiletto. It does mean that I have to stop and adjust every so often, which is fine, because if I'm being honest, if I were sewing with pins, I would be stopping to pull the pins out anyway. Now our block is fully sewn, the inside block, and I think I'm going to press the seams in towards the middle here, because trying to get them folded underneath that point of that flying geese unit is a little bit more difficult than just having the half square triangle units on the corners point in towards the middle. It feels like it wants to go in this direction, so we're going to let it. Now that our star block is done, we need to refer back to our layout to add our left and right border. This is the first border, the one that has the dark around it. And you can see that this is actually made up on the left and the right side of 3 different pieces. You need 2 of the HB half square triangle units and 1 of J for each side. So I'm going to go into my little stack of finished things. These are the only half square triangle units I have left, because the 4 that I had of the other combination is already in the block, so I know this is the one I'm working with. I know I need 2 of my J fabrics, and that is right here. So I'm going to make sure to lay this out the way the pattern layout, the pattern diagram has it. We have to take our first half square triangle unit and turn it so that fabric H is pointing down and to the right. We should have 2 like fabrics touching with the opposite fabric pointing up and to the left. And then we're going to get another half square triangle unit, and we're going to turn this into kind of a parallelogram. We don't want a diamond. We don't want blue touching orange. We want a parallelogram or that type of diamond, or whatever you want to call it. This is how it should look. So I'm going to sew this together and this together. Moment of truth. Yes. Okay, that's what I'm looking for there. Let me just make sure that I'm getting the same thing over here. Yes. Okay, I am. I am going to make sure that when I press these seams for the half square triangle units, it's going in opposite direction so that I can get the sides nested nicely. So now all I have to do is add the blue here and add the blue there. When I'm pressing the seam right here, this is going to come right in the middle of the flying geese, so it doesn't really matter which way you press it. I know if I push the fabric underneath the solid piece that I'm going to have less bulk. And so basically what I've done for the side units is pressed the seams away from the middle half square triangle unit. I am going to give that a little bit of heat to get those seams to lay nice and flat. Now that my side units are attached, I want to point out a couple of things. First one is I'm going to press the seams out away from the center block. I'm going to do that with a hot dry iron first. We're starting to add a bit of bulk to our seams, so at this point maybe you want to use a clapper or an Acorn Easy Press pen if you really want the block to lay nice and flat after each individual step. I'm just going to do a hot dry iron this time, and then when the block is all together, my trick is I like to go in and give a good best press to the block when it's all put together. Okay, we have the left and right borders. Now we've got to do the top and the bottom borders, and it's going to be the same thing, only with an extra piece. So we're going to do our fabric G in the upper right hand corner and another fabric G in the lower left hand corner. Then we're going to continue that ribbon look right here with 2 half square triangles, just like we did before. So I'm going to continue the pattern down here. Make sure that your fabric is oriented the right way. And then we're going to come in with our fabric I and our fabric I. And that, again, probably looks like it's not going to fit together, but look at all of these seams that we have to take. And once we've taken them, that's going to shrink up and it should match the bottom and the top size of our block. Looky there, I made a boo-boo. Think, no, I can recover. It should go together like that. Okay, did you see what I just did there? I laid this down and it didn't look right because these were too close together and I wasn't continuing that single half square triangle unit. So I just turned it around and look at that. This is what I should have. We are almost done with this. We just got to attach those to the block and then build that outer border to give this ribbon its 3D look. Right now it looks like they're just kind of lines shooting out, which could be an interesting block all on its own, but I really want the look that has that ribbon pivot, and that's where the flying geese units on the four sides come into play. Okay, for this block, I'm going to pay attention to the pressing instructions that I am lining this up with. Since all of my seams were pressed away from this unit, I need to make sure that this piece has its seam pressed to the left. This one, we want to make sure the seam is pressed to the left, and then this one really doesn't matter because it's going to hit right in the middle of the flying geese. All right, now we're going to build out our sides and our top and bottom, and it's actually really easy how we're going to do this. We're going to take a flying geese unit, and we're going to put a D on either side of that, and then we're going to take another flying geese unit, and we're going to put an F on either side of that. The fabrics with the F will be bigger. Those will be for the top and bottom. The fabrics with the D, the pieces with the F fabric will be the top and bottom. We'll put that on last. The piece with the D fabrics, which is smaller, will go on the sides. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew all of this together. Do a little bit of batch sewing to get this knocked out a bit quicker. And then I'm going to attach this just like that, making sure to nest my seams as I go. This is the seam down here that I'm worried about. So I'm going to lock those in and hold it with my finger as I approach. Once it's underneath the foot pedal, sorry, the foot, not the foot pedal. I just keep sewing all the way off. We're going to press those sides out away from the center. Get them nice and flat, and then we're going to attach our top and bottom, and this block will be done. Can you see how you're starting to get that 3D effect with that orange piece? Yeah, that's looking really cool. And this final step, we're going to press out and away from the center as well. And this time, I'm going to give the whole block just a little bit of starch. That's going to help make the whole block lay nice and flat, and it's going to be very crisp. And there you have it, block number 10 for our 2025 quilt along. I told you, this block was deceptively easy. Lots of little pieces, making sure your points align, but overall, a fun sew. And this is a block I've never made before, and it's one I have wanted to make for a long time. Before we go, I want to point something out to you because I had this problem all the time when I first started sewing. I would see things that were done online and it would look perfect and beautiful, and my work didn't look like that up close. I just want to highlight this for you because my block is not perfect, although maybe to some of you it looks perfect from this angle. Take a look at where this point is. Do you see how that doesn't perfectly match up? It's off by a couple of threads. You can't see it on camera, can you? Nope. And this one looks good, that looks good, this one's off too, but this one looks good, and I think that one looks okay too. So I've got a couple of points that don't look great. I have a couple where the points are floating, which means the point didn't hit right at the intersection that it's supposed to hit at, and a couple areas where the point is chopped off. And I've got some absolutely perfect points. Let's count them. One. I got one. And that's good enough for me. My rule is once you put your quilt block into an entire quilt, there's so much visual interest going on. You're not going to see those really tiny imperfections. And then once you quilt it and wash it, you're definitely going to notice it even less. Unless it is something that you can see from across the room, don't worry about it. Unless maybe it's a show quilt, then maybe worry about it. But I don't think any of us are using this to be a show quilt. I think we're using this pattern and this sew along to make a utilitarian quilt, a quilt that we like making, we want to make, and we hope like heck it gets used up. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me in this month's video. I like to end every single video installment showcasing 20 blocks from the previous month that you sewed to show you guys that I'm not the only ones doing this. And oh, by the way, if you haven't started, what are you waiting for? The patterns and the tutorial videos are not going anywhere. So if you haven't started, you can get started now. If you are behind, you can get caught up. Whatever works for you, the patterns and videos aren't going anywhere. All right, let's roll that beautiful block footage.